So good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Today we want to deal with a very important message for us today from the beginning of yesterday's Parsha, which straight after the Decalogue, revelation to 3 million of our ancestors, which you have to remember at all times. There follows the Mishpatim, Asher Tasim Lifnehem, which is the civil and criminal code for Am Yisrael. And the first law that is mentioned is concerning a thief who can't pay back what he stole. Maybe he's a thief who didn't own up, in which case got to pay double. It's called an Eved Ivri. In other words, it's a fellow Hebrew. And then there's a law of 6 years, and the 7th year goes free. And if he doesn't want to go free, then his ear has to be pierced to the doorpost of the house, and he's got to then serve his master for time till the Jubilee year. So there's a big question: why does the Torah begin? You can understand it begins the code of jurisprudence, which is really a follow-up on the last 5 declarations of the Decalogue, which deal with establishing a moral society. One of the aspects mentioned there also shouldn't steal. But it's still surprising because it's a very unusual situation where the courts go and sell this thief. They don't put him in prison, they try and find a family that's willing to adopt him. So of course, we can answer it simply. Although this is a law that didn't apply right away, it didn't apply in the desert, it didn't apply when the people entered the Holy Land, because it can only apply with this Jubilee, which only happened 14 years after our ancestors entered into the Eretz Canaan, when there was division of tribes and the laws of Jubilee were applied. In such an unusual case, because normally speaking, a person, even if he can afford it, he's not going to choose to have a servant who is a thief, who's got a criminal record. And furthermore, surely you won't expect so many other mishpatim which are mentioned in this parsha to take precedence, to show us the width and the depth. So one of the answers that's given is, just like we say, the strength of a chain is in the weakest link. So also the establishment of a good society is dependent on how you treat the worst underdog in the bottom of the underworld. And therefore the Torah tells us, make sure that you live in such a society where you can even treat people in such a manner. We might also say furthermore that this assumes that those who fortunately enough are inhibited against stealing, and they're also quite fortunate in being able to afford a servant. So then they've got certain laws how they should treat him. And in fact, the law is that if you analyze the passage thoroughly, you will see the sages say a person who does purchase this thief, as it were, for a 6-year period, is not purchasing a servant, he's purchasing a master over himself. Because the din is, the law is, that he's got one bed, he's the owner of the house, a very charitable person has to be. He's got one bed, he's got to give it to the criminal. If he's got one portion of meat, he's got to give it to the criminal. He's got to sleep on the floor and make do with vegetables. And so on. So also he's got the duty to give him type of work this person is used to, and not to try to force him to do any type of activity for which he's not really adapted. So it's not surprising that such a servant will say, well, this is a good place to stay. Nevertheless, the Torah says Jews should not be under servitude. Now, from this point of view, you'll see this development in the commentary of Hirsch, and you'll see it even more applied today. Because, in fact, I was going to bring you, handy now, the heading. I didn't manage to read the article. The heading is today's religious paper, which describes what actually has happened in Israeli prisons to people who were criminals. What has happened is that, I think it says that 80% of those who went to the prisons, and in the prisons in Israel, they were fortunate enough to meet rabbis and kibbutz workers who established courses for the prisoners, which were on a quite personal level, that people who were trained counselors, kibbutz workers, and rabbonim, they arranged for the prisoners courses in how to behave according to Torah. They were introduced to such things as making confession for their sins, whatever they were, for their crimes, and trying to take upon themselves a strong resolution they want to change. They became motivated, and they changed for the good. And it's proven itself. The type of trained counselors, many of them, they're trained in criminology, in psychotherapy, and they help so many, have helped so many to be rehabilitated in a manner that does not exist anywhere in the world. And they've become, not only they've become frum Jews, we say, but the part of being frum for them was to improve their behavior, and they were able to overcome their addictions to crime. So it's being recognized here in Israel as, that's why it says, it's introduced by these are the forms of judgment which are set before the people of Israel based upon the judgments of the Torah, and do not go to the form of judgment that you find in non-Jewish courts. To only here in Israel, they would recognize this, as it's recognized more and more amongst, let's call it, the moral citizens of all the nations, that there's been untold books and many, many articles and surveys and research works that demonstrate the enormous superiority of the laws of justice of the people of Israel in contrast to the laws of justice which are accepted in the different other systems of jurisprudence which are based upon whether it's Ottoman law, Roman law, British common law. They say you can't compare it. The Jewish law is so much improved, and this is shown not all the time. And therefore it's a great pity But here in Israel, the Supreme Court of Justice, even some of the older courts of justice, many of them are populated by judges who've got no background in Jewish law. It's a great pity. There was once my father, was a continental lawyer, had quite high level, and he told me when he came to Israel on a visit, before he met there a Supreme Court judge called Silberg, who was versed, in fact he learned in yeshivot, he was versed in Jewish law, and I read his books. At that time, he followed Mishpat HaIvri, that means true Hebrew jurisprudence, in many of his decisions, and it was so helpful. But since then we've had Supreme Court judges and others who, even if they know something, a smattering about Hebrew law, but they follow non-Jews. They think the non-Jewish culture brings them to a high level, and it doesn't. Even their systems of proof and evidence is unbelievably, we can even say, it's reactionary against principles, even sometimes of logic. Like, for example, huge prohibition of bribery is mentioned in this parsha, non-stop, but there can be no greater bribery than what they call a state witness. And here they've accepted this concept. And many other aspects which are ignored. Let's say, the Torah is particular to emphasize, you cannot separate the two tablets of stone. You can't separate relationship with the absolute God who's given us commandments from introducing an objective and absolute morality. If there's no awareness of there being an absolute power in this world, you're taking away the ground from protection against not only juvenile delinquency, but all forms of social, moral corruption. The two go together. So this is a very important lesson, which would have a simple explanation. However, it goes much deeper, as is shown in the Midrashim. Like the Midrashim say that, first of all, why is he called an Eved Ivri? So it says, something deeper here. It's the zchut of Avraham Avinu, who came from the other side of the river. It's called an Ivri. Ivri means the other side. And Midrash goes further and says, he was also a single, lone battler on one side of the world against the influences, the cultural and political influences of the rest of the world. You know that he was supposed to Nimrod, he's trying to spread iconoclasm, to knock down the idols of the nations of the world. With Midrash, his father was a manufacturer of idols, and when he managed to reach an awareness of the Creator, they made fun of it by when his father was away knocking down all the idols that he found in his father's factory of idols, and put a hammer in the hand of the strongest one. And when his father came over, he said, "What happened here? You've taken away my whole business. What happened?" So he said, "Well, you think they all have life, so there was a battle between the different gods who have got here, and the strongest one took a hammer and knocked down all the others. It's just making fun of them." He was the iconoclast. He was the one individual who became the teacher of mankind, of blessing, through accepting and developing the Noachide code and spreading the Noachide code. And therefore, that's the Eved Ivri is a demonstration that the people of Israel, they have a scope. On one side of the world, in other words, they have the ability to go against the trends, to be non-conformists, to be willing to be revolutionaries, to make a revolution for Hashem. That's the concept that lies in the word Ivrim. And this Midrash says, why is it that when Moshe Rabbeinu came to Pharaoh, he did not speak in the name of the God of Israel, he spoke in the name of the God of the Hebrews, Ivrim. Well, you know, the Hebrews, Terach was also an Ivri, from the point of view of ethnic background. But Avraham Avinu is given that term Avraham HaIvri because he changed things, because of his ability to be a revolutionary. And so, it's a revolution which the Mishpatim give us here. And that's why it brings the example of the Eved, who, although he's gone the wrong direction, but he always changed by going back to the Elokei Ivrim. They say more, but it's something deeper, another interpretation, which has to do with a question that has often been put in the last few weeks in this Shiur, which is why in the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments are introduced. I am Hashem your God, who took you out from the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. I want to translate literally, the place which was the home of enslavement. Said Beit Avadim. And you, the people of Israel, were on the lowest level of enslavement. So why is the Decalogue introduced in this manner, and not to say, I am Hashem your God, who created you? He created the world. This is a question also we saw in the Kuzari. And even the Kuzari hints in his longer reply upon the following. He says, for the nations of the world, so the direct way to recognize Hashem, like Avraham Avinu also, before the Torah was given, is to recognize that you can't explain nature unless you assume that there is a mind behind the universe. That was recognized by Avraham Avinu, recognized by all the leading thinkers who were willing to think all the way through without prejudice until the present day. They recognize nature demonstrates a divine mind which is above nature, which you see all the time. And this was, and therefore, for the nation of the world, this could be a good answer. But for the people of Israel, to listen to the Decalogue, especially we have to be the people, priest and the holy nation, to be a model for the other nations. So therefore we have to recognize that Hashem put us through the whole experience of being His people, B'nai B'chorei Yisrael, through the 10 plagues also. They were intended for Pharaoh, the non-Jews, but they were more intended for the people of Israel. And we should know, in life, we have to recognize we should be servants of Hashem. And to be a servant of Hashem means also not to be self-centered, to be altruistic, to give to others, to be in Eved Hashem, and to control your own instincts in order that you should be a moral citizen of this world, you should be able to spread morality. And therefore, Hashem, as one of His ways was, He said, I can't let you become this people, as He already mentioned in His visions to Avraham Avinu, unless you first go through the school of suffering. Because if you'll only be given blessing to become the greatest people, as promised to Avraham Avinu, for you will bless all the families of the earth, They can only become blessed if you yourselves feel what it means to be a slave. That's why you've been slave to Maharal. So that, as it says constantly, the Chumash, after you've got to love the stranger, the orphan and the widow, because you were enslaved in Egypt. And the awareness of, you've got to feel it. Also, yesterday's passage keeps et ani imach. The poor person, the suffering person, is with you. Because you, as a Jew, as one who heard Aseret HaDibrot, said, no, I took you out from the home of enslavement, so that you should at all times have sympathy and activity. If you've got health, see to those who don't. If you've got wealth, help those who are poor. If you've got a high level of family, good background, solid, also giving you strong roots in morality, help those who don't have it. And that's without that, you won't be able to become the kingdom of priests, the nations of the world. And therefore, Ki Tikne Evet Ivri, in fact, there's a deeper explanation, also given by the Midrashim, that says that when Hashem said, I'm taking your Beit Avadim, then also he gave the people of Israel, already then, the law of freeing the slaves. David Ivri, who has to be freed. You can't keep him for long, only up to 6 years. Like what's the whole concept, 6 and 7. More than that, it says something else. The final blow to the Egyptians came on Pesach night, when the families of the Egyptians, they were destroyed, and the Jews were saved because they put the blood of the Korban Pesach on the doorpost. And in that moment, when the blood was put on the doorpost, they were given also the law to let all the Avadim go free in the Yovel, the Jubilee year. It had no application then. Why were they given that law? But that's the concept that the Evet Ivri has to have his ear pierced, because, first of all, because he was a thief and he heard with his ear, law taken off, you shouldn't steal, nor any of the other evils mentioned, you should avoid, mentioned in the Decalogue and called the Ten Commandments. And at the same time, you also heard that Hashem took you out from the Beit Avadim that you should become free. And you decided to ignore the freedom that's promised and become someone who's sold as a servant. So this is also a question. Then there was a question of the people of Israel having the mitzvah of Shiluach Avadim. They hadn't even gone out of the land yet. But what lies behind this? The whole concept is, and I think the best way it's expressed in the words of the great classic of ethical literature, The Duties of the Heart, by the Dayan, he was the Dayan, Ibn Pakuda, Rabbi Bachai is called, and he says that that a person in life is either a servant to Hashem, or is a servant to his evil inclination. Or Adam Evet L'Yotzro, or Evet L'Yitzro. He's got to choose to try to become a servant of Hashem. If he doesn't try that, he'll still be a slave. Even if he's the richest person, the person got most money, has got most power, got all the pleasures of the world, but he's enslaved to his money. He's enslaved to his power, and which destroys his divine image. So a person's got to choose, the people of Israel have to choose. So therefore, the lessons for us today from this are twofold. First of all, to recognize that in our time also, this concept of how to treat the lowest segments of the population, it can only come through those who have to know that our purpose in life is to help the have-nots, whatever we have. The person's got whatever talents he has, he should use them for others. Even person chooses a profession, he, of course, in order to help others, he's got to keep his health. And he should obviously use whatever talent he has to provide himself with sustenance. But sustenance is just the basis. You should have enough sustenance for yourself and your family so that you can help other people. Because you can't help other people unless you preserve yourself to the maximum. Then we've got to look after our health, we've got to look after, we shouldn't become people who are too much dependent on others. We'll have to beg from others. That's not the right path. We don't believe in this, to keep everything away, so afterwards you're helpless and hopeless. No, you've got to be constantly a helper and constantly a hoper. Both you have to have, hope and help. Because Hashem will help you if you help others. Hashem's name is Chesed, and therefore we fulfill our duty to become servants of Hashem if we will also do Chesed. The more Chesed we do, the more Chesed we will receive. So this is the basis of the Mishpat, is Mishpat Tzedakah v'Chesed. Mentioned already to Avraham Avinu, when there's a question of preserving or destroying Sodom and Amorah. So Hashem said, Yadativ, I've known him because he will pass on to those who follow his path the Derech Hashem, La'asot Tzedakah Mishpat. Hashem's ways, yes, Tzedakah and Mishpat. Tzedakah really means giving unto others, but do it in a way that is a Mishpat. In other words, if you give away too much to others, then you yourself can't fulfill your purpose in life completely from the talents He give you, and also sometimes you will be helping evildoers to spread their evil further. So you have a duty to use the negative aspect, which sometimes enters into mishpatim, to curb the spread of evil in the world. So I would say that the message for Jews everywhere, and especially Jews in Eretz Israel, is twofold. One, to give as much as possible to others, Jew and Gentile, but at the same time, don't follow the corruption which we find amongst those who, on the whole, they're not willing to accept the absolute authority of mind behind the universe in their lives. And sometimes as a result of this, or because of other aspects of culture which have developed, they feel that we just got to give, even to evildoers. There's been some of the Western and Christian civilization says, you know, don't resist evil under any circumstance. Don't use any strong resistance to evil. But if apparently it wasn't not evil to yourself. So if people will hit you on one cheek, go and show them the other cheek. And a person asks you, please can I have your overcoat? Give him your shirt. And if he asks you for money, give him whatever you've got. You remain without a shirt, and then you catch cold, and then sometimes you remain without food. No, that's not the way. You shouldn't go in such. And also, especially when it comes to criminals, when people want to kill you, don't say, well, if they want to kill me, what can I do? I just pray to God they shouldn't kill me. But I should take up arms to kill him first. No. And if the people say we're going to murder and murder, you say, well, don't imprison them. They've got their reason. They feel that you're oppressing them. That's why they keep on murdering. We have today a whole movement to go and tell lies about the people of Israel, which tell us, and want the world to understand, if there are any wicked murderers who want to destroy innocent people, Jews or others who oppose them, it's because we, the Jewish people, we try to help, but there's a limit. We don't help people to go on murdering. Then they go and blame the victims of murder instead of the murderers. So we shouldn't go for such extreme concepts of liberalism, because that is destroying morality in the world. Any questions, please?
If you don't have, like you said, the Kodesh Baruch and his Torah as his leadership, and whether it be communism or capitalism, everything has to have its laws. And if you don't have its laws, it can't exist. And if you don't have a leadership, the thing cannot function, whatever it is.
Anarchy.
It's anarchy. You have anarchy, like Daesh. Everywhere they go, they call it anarchy because they have no law.
Who has to take over leadership?
No?
Who has to take over leadership?
The Kodesh Baruch Hu, and his Torah. We have to follow his leadership.
Who on this globe has to take over leadership?
You mean
All people, Am Yisrael. We have to be the leader. What does it mean to be Av Amon Goyim? Be the teacher and the guide for all the nations. Mamlechet Kohanim is the same concept. The Kohanim, among the people of Israel, they are the leaders. They have to lead us primarily to their own example. The first task of the Kohanim is to serve Hashem in the Beit HaMikdash, from which we should all learn. But then it also says in the Chumash, the tribe of Levi and the Kohanim, Yoru Mishpatecha Li'Yaakov U'Toratcha L'Yisrael. They have the duty to teach the others. And the Rambam, in fact, develops this, crystallizing what's mentioned in so many words of the sages. He says, very interesting, look at the end of Shemitah V'Yovel of the Rambam, who's our greatest exponent of Torah, Pichtav and Baal Peh. So he said, don't think it's only the tribe of Levi and the Kohanim, but any human being who also decides to dedicate himself to holy life, like the Kohanim and Leviim, even as the servant the actual Beit HaMikdash, wherever he is, including Gentiles, he says he will have the same privilege as mentioned in the Chumash. He said, Ani Hashem Cheltechem. I am your portion. He becomes a representative of Hashem on this earth, and becomes Holy of Holies. So it applies to every human being on his level. Despite the fact that Rambam says, you know, that it doesn't say all the mitzvahs apply to the Bnei Noach. But this higher concept applies to those individuals who accept Hashem, and they want to spread even the Noachide code on its highest level to all mankind, which is the purpose of the people of Israel. And this also, the impression is, it applies even someone didn't become a Ger Tzedek. He can also become saintly. Anyway, that's our task, what we have to represent today. That the image that the people of Israel give today in the world, unfortunately, is it's not enough the occasional statements that are made that we do believe in God and so on. It's got to enter into the lifestyle and the way of presenting the case for the state of Israel. Got to be like is expressed even on a deeper level by the flag, which is the tzitzis. Nobody says about the tzitzis. The tzitzis for the whole world. In fact, the final reference to tzitzis is given the prophet who says there will come a time when 10 representatives of each nation of the world will come and say to the Jew, grasp hold of his tzitzis, they'll say, we want you to teach us how to come near to Hashem. The tzitzis, these are the Abba Kamfut Aretz. From all corners of the world, they'll come to us and say, show us the path. So we've got to prepare ourselves to be able to teach them. But the Gemara puts it this way, that in the future, each Jew will have to become a Rosh Yeshiva for 2,800 disciples. So there are already a few yeshivas for more than that number. I mean, you've got Mir Yeshiva here, I think they have 6,000 students. And Lakewood, it was a very large number. But we'll have to widen the situation to accommodate the 70 nations. They'll all want to share, they'll want to find out. So that the deep, when we take our tzitzit, we say, in the morning we take the 4 tzitzit together, we should have that in mind. Because we've got to be the Mamlechet Kohanim, V'yitem Kedoshim Le'Elokechem, it says. So I'll tell you just by the way, since you say Kriyat Shema every day was a parsha of tzitzit, have you noticed that there's apparently repetition? It says you should look at the tzitzis. You all know the tzitzit remind us of Hashem, who's in the distance, he's there beyond the horizon. It's because our concept of the sky blue tzitzit. Even the tzitzit day, most of us just have white, but it's the same principle. And we hope the time will come when teaching of holiness spread to the whole world. But if you look carefully, there's a apparent repetition. But it says, first it says, "V'yitem otos chadim es kol mitzvos Hashem v'asitem otam, v'lo tetur achilach ma she'ater zon ma'achayichem." So that pasuk speaks about the mitzvot, which reminds us all the mitzvot that Hashem has given you. It's a third person. And then it says, the ma'an tizkaru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, should remember through tzitzit, and do all my mitzvot. That's the temporal. So then everything is in the second, no longer the third person. Hashem himself is speaking to us. And then v'yitem kedoshim lekechem. So it's a repetition, same phrases, more or less. But first pasuk, Hashem is in the third person. The next pasuk, the mitzvot already become a direct, you should feel a direct commandment of Hashem. And then we end with Ani Hashem Elokechem. Hashem speaking, it's direct. Hashem says to us, I am your Hashem. It's not Moshe Rabbeinu, because Moshe Rabbeinu was given the mitzvah to the people of Israel. But then the last part, it's all transformed from the third person to the second person. Just like having a Seder Tadibur, which have the same principle. It means Hashem can be in our minds, we think Hashem is above the world, He's above my mind, He creates the universe every minute, He looks after us, looks after all mankind, He's above me. But you should bring it down to the level when you feel Hashem is addressing me. It's not just in the third person, it's in the first and second person. Hashem is the first person, is addressing me, myself. Ani Hashem Elohim, I take you out from all your troubles. That's why we say this here, this Zechirat Yetzias Mitzrayim, is you've got no, I'm taken out from Egypt, my Egypt. I've also got limitations. Hashem is helping me to remove all limitations in my way. Hashem Elohim Emet, He is the ultimate truth, not only the absolute objective truth, He is the deepest, eternal, I would say personal truth. That's it.